our brain is, like any other muscle, also starts degenerating bit by bit every decade. Neurodegeneration, once it sets in, it's very hard to reverse. And even clinically, the solutions that are available are either prohibitively expensive or partly effective. Your brain's biological age is the number one determinant of your health span in your later years. If you look at the last decade, early onset cases have really risen, and primarily to do with the fact that risk factors that affect brain health have been completely at an all-time high. More if your brain health is healthy, you will keep yourselves healthy. So it's very intrinsically linked to how you will age. But today, when you get a dopamine hit or the click of a button, your brain is kind of just really struggling to keep up with everything else that's going on. A lot of people had underlying chronic conditions of hypertension, diabetes. So that, of course, is something that we all know. But I don't think these folks know that they are living with a greater risk of dementia in their lives. I would be very surprised if early onset does not become one of the biggest, I would say, unfortunate tragedies of the midlife crisis as we know today.
All geared up to run more, lift more, hit the gym, or whatever else it is that you have resolved to do in 2026. Well, your health plan is missing a key element, and addressing this is super critical because this will impact how you perform at work, whether you will get that promotion. It affects all of your interpersonal relationships as a partner, a husband, a wife, a parent, son, daughter, or friend. And it will also impact your quality of life, your future as you grow older. Not just that, ignore it now in your 40s, especially if you're in your 40s, and it will cost you a lot of money. In fact, let's go straight across to our guest who's going to tell us more about this. Isaac, what is it that is missing from most people's health plans for the new year?
I'll preface it by saying that maybe for people beyond the age of 40, Kavita, because the science out there is pretty clear. Our brain is, like any other muscle, also starts degenerating bit by bit every decade, and is just about apt that just like how people do, let's say, their heart checkups, their full body checkups, you start checking in on your brain. All the more important because neurodegeneration, once it sets in, it's very hard to reverse. And even clinically, the solutions that are available are either prohibitively expensive or partly effective, right? To put it very, very mildly. So increasingly becoming important that, you look at your, brain health, just exactly how it's almost like we take our brain health for granted. And that's what Ivory is here to change, hopefully step by step, person by person.
In fact, Isaac, all of us are guilty of this till we hit our 40s and something starts hurting, something starts paining, or you are not able to run at your child's sports day. That's when you realize that you've been ignoring your physical health. Now we know what we need to do over there, but is cognitive health, which like you are telling us we've been ignoring, is that something that can be fixed?
Yes, very much so. In fact, a lot of the recent research, points it, to the fact that addressing your, risk factors can actually help you completely allay your, future risk of dementia, all the way up to 50 to 60%, depending from paper to paper. And this has been proven by a study known as the FINGER study, the Finnish Geriatric Intervention Study, which is currently running in 60 plus countries. I have personally seen some of the data that, ISC and the Central, for Brain Research has brought out in this regard when, they are conducting like a like-to-like model of the finger study in India. And the results are very promising, showing that people who, let's say, had cognitive deficits or had cognitive impairments, when regularly put on a schedule, or when they start working on their risk factors, there is a clear improvement in things like executive function and things like processing speed, and obviously like reducing overall risk of dementia by 40-50%. So if you had asked me this question 10 years ago, perhaps the research was not as rich as it is today. But today, this finger study, for example, is happening in 60 plus countries, or even more. And I think all of that is pointing to the fact that, serious neurodegenerative risk like dementia is preventable if addressed at the right time.
We will, of course, talk about that a little more in detail. But first, let me address our viewers here, and this is why we are having this conversation with Isaac John. on the longevity shot today. So Isaac is a co-founder of Ivory. Ivory is an Indian cognitive health startup. He is not a neuroscientist, he is not a doctor, but his company Ivory conducts brain health assessments that are US FDA approved and are backed by neuroscientists. Now, the guys at Ivory have helped over thousands of Indians assess their brain health, identify issues if there are any, and also they've got them professional help to get these fixed. Plus, Isaac and his co-founder Rahul Krishnan started Ivory for very personal reasons. Those reasons are also why Isaac will tell you why this new year you should be prioritizing not just your physical health, but also your brain health. And if you're in your 40s, like Isaac told us earlier, this is mandatory. So Isaac, if you could just tell us what is it that got you to start Ivory? You're a marketing man. How did you get into something like cognitive health?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised myself that, I've gone so deep in health tech in a way that, my previous 2 decades did not probably kind of, if you look at that career graph, it will probably not tell you that, I was to land where I did today. But a very personal kind of experience that I had with my father's Parkinson's is what led me to this. My father actually developed Parkinson's when he was in his late 60s, and he lived with it for about 6 7 years. And every time I saw him, in spite of being very regular with medication, and he worked actually till about the time he was 70, and a regular sort of work schedule, etc. It kind of kept worsening. And when you go through something like that, it always stays at the back of your mind. So when I left Discovery, one of the things that I wanted to address was this, but I did not have a health tech background. So as you can imagine, when we started, Ivory's first stab at the problem was actually not from a clinical lens. It was just to ensure that can seniors stay engaged enough in different activities so that they can keep serious risk at bay, because isolation and loneliness are also risk factors. But as and when we started going deeper and deeper in terms of solving the problem, we realized that there are very few clinical tools. In fact, in India, pre-Ivory, like 2 years ago, I'm not even sure, if there was something like a preventive brain health checkup that even existed. And that is something that really kind of spurred Rahul and I. Rahul, in fact, used to buy, for example, Sudoku books for his, father, but not knowing as to whether, his father's cognitive skills were on par or not doing so great, right? So, and then we realized that, well, the West has like a series of cognitive health assessment. Countries like UK, Singapore, they have these cognitive health assessment packaged in their, let's say, full body health checkups. But India almost does not do that at all, and it's completely understandable. As an economy, we are still growing. We probably are still have to go up that ladder of chain of healthcare from curative to preventive. And yeah, I'll just probably take one more minute to explain why brain health is important if you're just thinking that you can take it for granted. Well, the science here is very clear. Your brain's biological age is the number one determinant of your health span in your later years. This is a Lancet paper. This is multiple NCBI papers wherein they compared volumetric mass. They looked at how cognitive function evolves over a period of time, and those who were cognitively doing better in their 40s and 50s ended up having a much stronger 70s and 80s. So there's a lot of evidence that which tells us that brain health should be kept very much in the center of your of your health kind of health whatever
Clearly,
health
and,
care
and
talk.
that's precisely the reason we are having this conversation right at the beginning of the before the new year begins,
Yeah,
so that people actually start doing these things. So here's how this conversation is going to pan out. We'll first do some myth busting around the brain and its health. We
sure.
are then going to understand why we need to prioritize our brain health, especially if you're in your 40s. And
Right.
lastly, Isaac will tell us what we can do to keep our brains sharp and healthy. So, if you want an action plan for brain health for this year, make sure you watch this right till the end. So yeah, but Isaac, before we get started on all of this, let's do a quick round of clearing up some notions that are associated with brain health, right? So one is, of course, that brain health and mental health are the same thing.
Not the same, codependent, but brain health is functional, how your brain is performing, your attention, your problem solving skills. Mental health is more emotional, behavioral, how you're feeling, that kind of thing.
Okay. What about brain disorders? Most people believe that they are genetic. So if my parents are fine, I will be fine, is the belief.
No, actually, your lifestyle factors contribute a way larger percentage to, like high risk neurodegenerative conditions like dementia and Alzheimer's. Genetics at best would probably be 8 to 10%.
Ageist, and what's going to come next after that is a very racist kind of observation. Brain
Mhm.
disorders only affect older people, people who are, beyond 65, 70, 75 years of age.
This was true for a long time, but I think if you look at the last decade, early onset cases have really risen, and primarily to do with the fact that risk factors that affect brain health have been completely at an all-time high. More people are stressed, more people sleep lesser, more people move less, for example, right? So physical activity back in the day used to be high, and that's where, of course, it was okay to accept a condition like Alzheimer's to be referred as an old man's disease, but not anymore. You'll be surprised, Kavita, the number of early onset cases that we get on a monthly basis, that people are seeking help for. So not at all. I would say it is just a way to keep your body healthy. If your brain health is healthy, you will keep yourselves healthy. So it's very intrinsically linked to how you will age.
You spoke about Alzheimer's. Now, there is a belief that Alzheimer's or dementia is something is more of a Western disease, something that affects people in the US, in Europe, etc. Indians don't really get Alzheimer's or dementia.
Part of that is because there is a lot of underreporting that happens. So the systems that, let's say, between the urban and the rural kind of divide that this country has are not as evolved as, let's say, in the West, wherein you some of these things can be caught in early, and they are a lot more systematic and perhaps even captured at a central level. India is likely to have the same percentage of rate of incidence of cognitive impairment and dementia as others. In fact, the more rural a country is, sorry, the more illiterate a country is or a region is, higher the risk of dementia. So I'm pretty sure that if, let's say, India's literacy levels are not on par with the West, it's quite likely that India is gonna face or is currently facing a risk that is higher than that of an advanced country, which is a lot more educated. So yeah.
You addressed this earlier. I solve a crossword, I do the Wordle, I do Sudoku every day. Is that enough to keep my brain healthy?
It is enough if you also are, let's say, sleeping well and you're moving every day, and you're, social as a person. So I think these are the four, I would say, pillars around which, brain health can be protected very strongly. But if you just keep doing puzzles and Sudokus and Wordles, you will keep getting better at puzzles and Sudokus and Wordles. But, if you're just like bedridden and sort of, smoking all the way and not sleeping well, it doesn't help even if you're a Sudoku world champion.
What about supplements? We are told fish oil, cod liver oil, omega 3 supplements. These are really good, and that should keep my brain healthy.
So vitamin B12, vitamin D, omega 3, these are all things that I would say are brain health protective in nature. And you could always think about, when you think of brain health as things which, let's say, harm your brain, like smoking, drinking, less sleep harms your brain. And let's say some of these other things, they protect your brain. But I don't think there is enough research to say that people who are having like all these three supplements will not have brain health risk, for the very same reason that we just spoke about in the previous question. It all goes together. Somebody who's like very sharp on supplements but not exercising, not a great idea.
Um, Also, I'm a person, say, who thrives on pressure. I have a very high pressure job. I'm constantly meeting tight deadlines. So obviously, stress is a given. That's affecting my physical health, but mentally, my brain is always working. So that should keep my brain sharp.
No, your brain requires rest and restoration. And that's one of the reasons why people say that, sleep or even mindfulness or, meditation are helpful things. Again, brain protective things. See, the thing is that when your brain works throughout the day, it also needs rest, which is why sleep is one of the most underrated hacks for, having sharp cognitive health on a day-to-day basis. Because, when you actually sleep, your brain is kind of going through everything that you have gone through the day. They are restoring, some of the synaptic connections. They're actually restoration of memories is happening at a stronger level. So if you do not protect your brain from, let's say, stress, and do not rest enough, it is not a good signal for your brain at all.
But let's look at hard data now. On a screen,
Yeah,
you will see, viewers, the price that India is paying for ignoring brain health. It is more common than you think. It is also a younger person's problem. It is not just an age old problem, as Isaac will tell us. Now, Isaac, I know that Ivory had released a report in 2025. This is a primer on brain health among urban educated Indians.
that's right.
Tell us this: how old were these people whom you studied, and what did you find?
So we actually had three different cohorts of people. We had people above the age of 30. We had 30 to 45, then 45 to 54, and then 55 and above. I don't remember the exact age ranges, but we had divided them under these three different cohorts. And what we found was, if I have to call out like two or three insights which came out very clearly and, sort of were partly surprising and partly, let's say, a little worrying, is that urban isolation is a reality. A lot of people feel that, express the fact that they feel lonely through their days, and, they do not have someone to talk to. Number two was the fact that irrespective of your age group, if you were going through, let's say, a mental health issue, or you had faced a mental health issue, you were not scoring very well on our cognitive assessments. So almost like a 20% drop between people who were healthy mentally and sort of functional, versus people who, let's say, were going through either a serious depressive disorder, or were diagnosed as, more anxiety prone, and even with like PTSD and MCI, that these are all conditions that actually suppressed your cognitive score. So just going back to your question on mental health and brain health, I would say these two were the most pressing things. Apart from that, I would say that the risk factors were again very prevalent. A lot of people had underlying chronic conditions of hypertension, diabetes. So that, of course, is something that we all know. But I don't think these folks know that they are living with a greater risk of dementia in their lives. So that was the worrying part of the report.
Now, of course, I mean, diabetes is very, very prevalent in India. So, even hypertension for that matter. So, what you're saying is that a lot of people in India are at a risk of dementia or some other kind of brain related
Yeah.
health issues.
Without knowing themselves. So, right today, I mean, even 3 years or 4 years ago, before I started building Ivory, I did not know that, that is a particular risk factor. But now I think research is increasingly evident that, in fact, a lot of cases of, let's say, extreme cognitive impairment that we have seen at Ivory typically have a very high correlation. It's not causation, but there is a very high correlation with, diabetes, linked situations wherein, people have been suffering from it over years, and then it comes to affect them in their 60s and 70s.
So, this in itself is a very new concept. The
Yeah,
fact that you can test for brain health,
yeah,
like you can test for, say, cardiac health. So, what
yeah.
does it show us? Does it show us our risk for developing brain related health problems? And also, what does it entail? I mean, most people have a fear of injections. There's a fear of MRIs and all of these invasive procedures
Yeah.
that people have to undergo. So, what
Yeah.
does the brain health test entail?
Yeah, I'll undertake this part. This I can go a little longer, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So think of the brain function assessment, and I'll use a cardiac analogy to it. So when, let's say, somebody is being assessed for, let's say, cardiac risk, right? A good doctor will actually triangulate it by taking your ECG, your blood markers, and your treadmill test as well, right? Like how well your heart is functioning. So think of our brain assessment as a treadmill test for the brain. So in a treadmill test, you run for 15, 20 minutes. You are able to see whether, your heart is pumping normally or not in extraneous conditions. That's exactly what a cognitive assessment is. We put you through 17 gamified cognitive tasks, one after the other. Think of this as something that is as simple as take the ball to the center of the maze. Now, people who are normal will do it at an average time. People who are, there will be obviously be like a 10% outlier who will crack it. But if you are not really struggling to do it and, are not able to figure out, it gives us an early signal of how your brain is functioning today. So the nuance to what you asked me, Kavita, is that our assessment in its present format, and again, we have two SKUs. So we have one which does like a full health and lifestyle assessment along with the cognitive assessment, or you can just do the cognitive assessment. The cognitive assessment will tell you about how your brain is functioning today compared with other people of your age and gender. The health and lifestyle assessment will also tell you about your future risk of dementia. And that's based on a fairly well-established open standard protocol known as the COG-D risk assessment framework. So people, typically what we have seen is that younger people just want to do the brain assessment because they just want to know how they are doing. But when it comes to, like, say, people in their 45, 50 and above, they prefer combining it with the brain health and lifestyle assessment. And of course, if we are able to see that the person is also not doing well in the cognitive assessment, the health and lifestyle factors are high, that's when we put them under a bucket wherein, again, depending from case to case, it's either an observation bucket or a high risk bucket. The high risk bucket, immediately we put them in practitioners who are on our panel, who are experts in the subject of like cognitive impairment and risk of and dementia risk, and they go through a standard clinical protocol which is governed by them.
Great. So coming back to the report, and you mentioned this earlier, a concept called cognitive age or brain age. Now,
Yeah.
how is that different from how old I really am? And why does it matter so much?
Yeah, so the cognitive age, I would say, is not, at least in the way we are doing it. It's more just so that people get a sense of where they lie. But I would not say it's a clinical grade kind of a measure, because if you do, let's say, your blood panel or your genomic panel, etc., you will get a much more accurate picture of your biological age, which is gonna be like a little more accurate or a lot more accurate than, let's say, what our cognitive age is. The cognitive age is something that we mention in our report just so that people get an idea of benchmarking. And cognitive age is not the only thing we mention. We mention, your overall cognitive performance, like is it below average, average, needs attention, worth monitoring, excellent, right? So that is actually the more important thing. And then alongside also the cognitive age and real age gives people a sense of that, oh, am I doing well?
What is
Yeah,
am I doing well? So if I am, say, 45 or 47,
yeah.
so what is a good cognitive age to be at?
So anything with like a interval range of, let's say, 2 to 3 years is okay. So whether up or down, both are okay. Because like I said, it is not a very sensitive measure. But when it comes to, let's say, your cognitive performance, about how you actually performed on the age. So cognitive age is a function of your cognitive performance, but cognitive performance is generally like, like a little more quantitative in its avatar, because it will tell you, Kavita, as to whether your attention is on par with other people of your age and gender or not. Right? And and similarly, we do benchmarking across attention, memory, reasoning, visual spatial perception, as well as hand-eye coordination. So you get an average of well done or needs monitoring, etc., across all of them. So it is impossible for almost anyone. I wouldn't say impossible, but it's very rare for everybody to be excellent at everything. It can't be, right? These are all like we discussed earlier. Someone's memory might be great, someone's maths might be great. It doesn't mean that the other faculties will be as good. And the same holds true for what we show in our report as well. Where risk started trust, and the reason why our battery does a good job is because the same skill is tested at least 3 or 4 times in the course of a 30-35 minutes. So that's why the test is good at, let's say, screening out, false negatives, right? So that's what every good test should do. That we should be calling out risk early, and that's what the test is really good at.
So again, from a very midlife perspective, I mean,
Hmm.
typically in your 40s, that's when at work,
Hmm.
you're peaking, you're getting more responsibilities and all of that, and obviously you need to do more.
Hmm.
Uh, Say I take this the test that you have at
Hmm.
Ivory.
Hmm.
Now, what are the uh, parameters that I should be looking at from a work performance perspective? And can it really tell me, this is probably why you're not doing great at work? and not just from a health perspective?
It's a great question. We do not equate it to like a work performance related test. And I would say that there are other psychometric evaluation tools that will do a better job at sort of calling that out. And I'll give you a reason why. For example, if your hand-eye coordination is not that great, right? But if your job is to, let's say, be really good at making, IRR projections for a company, like let's say you're a financial analyst, it doesn't matter if your hand-eye coordination isn't great, right? You're not in a driving job. You're not, taking 150 passengers on a plane. It's okay. So I would say that those kind of performance-based tests need to be a lot more targeted to what, let's say, the vocation requires, right? However, from a general cognition perspective, that is every aspect of my brain, which is supposed to, like remember things well, visually make out, distances, reason, problem solve, those basic things. If we get like an early sign check on that, so we always position this as either a cognition profiler or a cognitive health screener, right? So even when we sometimes get, let's say, work related conversations, exactly how you said, we are very clear about saying that please don't use this as a work measurement tool. However, if you want to use this as a measurement tool of saying that, hey, I have got probably 20% of my employee workforce which is struggling with stress, which is, let's say, struggling with or anxious or depressed. This test can help you identify as to what percentage of those people are probably not cognitively on par with their performance ranges. So that's something that the test can do, but it is not meant to be.
So, the other thing that I wanted to ask you is there a gender gap in how men and women age? Because with women, you also have the entire menopause cycle that comes in.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when the menopause cycle comes in, there are some neuroprotective hormones which, kind of are not at play in your later years. So that's the one of the key reasons why women are actually at greater risk of dementia. There is also another reason, and that's a little more obvious, is that women on an average live longer than men. And if you are living longer, then you are at higher risk for Alzheimer's. But there is enough evidence that suggests that the changes that a woman's body goes through post 45, 50, there are some neuroprotective elements which kind of go out of the equation, and it's important for women to actually be very aware of how their cognition is on a decade by decade basis.
Now we know that India is the diabetes capital of the world. Indians are falling sicker earlier. Like you also highlighted, we've seen people in their 40s getting heart attacks. You said there is some sort of early onset that has been observed for
Yes.
dementia and for Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Um, can you elaborate on that, and what is the evidence? What are you seeing in the cohort that you're working with, in the people that you're working with?
The early onset bit is probably exaggerated, and because of just the fact that there is so much of stimulus pressure on us these days that our brains constantly feel like they are on overdrive. So I mentioned briefly about how rest, relaxation, sleep are extremely important. Today's idea of, let's say, a 35-year-old's rest after he or she has come back from work is to either passively like turn on the television or be on mobile phone, right? And unknowingly, I have at least anecdotally seen that the number of people who we get in the 45 to 50 range is abnormally high today than, let's say, two years ago. Like Ivory was also doing something very similar 2 years ago. But of course, today the number of instances we hear from our clinician partners, from, like direct inquiries, from, again, like, just like general observation, is that this younger set is today struggling a little more than what, let's say, the last generation would have. Why is this happening? One reason could be that physical activity is going down or not as much as on par. Second reason is definitely this lethargy and this mobile screen attention, etc. MIT recently took out a report which says that AI is eroding your critical thinking skills. Our attention spans are reducing. These are all kind of things that are linked to how your brain performs to functions to stimulus. And earlier, a dopamine hit would be good like once in a week. But today, when you get a dopamine hit at the click of a button, your brain is kind of just really struggling to keep up with everything else that's going on. So I think I wonder if I can pull out some research on this and share it with you, Kavita. But I would be very surprised if early onset does not become one of the biggest I would say, unfortunate tragedies of the midlife crisis as we know today.
And just to kind of drive that point home a little more, there are studies, of course, two studies that came out in the last 1 year. One is how the brain ages, and they told us the brain ages at 44 and 66. Then there was
Yes.
another one which spoke about the 5 ages of brain, where your
Hmm.
teenage adolescence actually extends
Hmm.
well into your 30s, and then your brain sort of starts aging.
Yeah.
So clearly, 40s is a very critical period
Yeah.
for whatever you are telling us. So would you say that is also a great time to actually begin an intervention of sorts to start, investing in brain health, like we like to say on the longevity shot?
Yeah, 100%. And we say 40s is because, again, even from a longevity standpoint, right? If you look at the work of Dr. Peter Attia and a few other researchers around the world, they say that you'll have four killers of humanity, right? There is metabolic health, there is cancer, there is neurodegeneration, there's, of course, the cardiovascular health. Um, if you look at the advancement in the other three spaces, right? You know so much about the other three, but so little about, the fourth factor. And what do you begin? Peter Attia says that 40s is again like the time when you should start acting, because then you get that bit much more time. In fact, the research here is so encouraging. Even if you've not done anything for the rest of your life, right? You've actually not done well, but you start your work and you start taking care of your brain health and like all these other risk factors by, let's say, in your mid 40s, your body will give you a second chance to help you live a really, really strong and independent 70s and 80s. So definitely, like you mentioned, these two researchers is definitely, like, it's come on our radar as well. But I would say, like, even if you look at where longevity health and precision medicine is heading, I think that's more encouraging news. I would say that anybody who is seeing this and feels that, is their time is lost, no, the body gives you, like, another 15, 20 years to, course correct everything.
And like you told us, we the brain believes in second chances. That note, Isaac, let's start talking fixes now.
Sure.
I'm reminded of what Ramani Sundararaman told us earlier. She's from the Dementia India Alliance. Of course,
Yeah.
you know her. You
Yeah.
worked
Yeah.
with her.
Yeah.
Now, she had come on the longevity shot, and for our viewers, that was a hugely popular episode. If you've not seen it, uh, make sure you see it, try it, and we will actually queue it up for you so that you can watch it later. There was a lot of practical advice that she had given us on that particular episode. And one of the things that she mentioned was that lifestyle changes can cut dementia risk by 45%. So, is that the case with just dementia or with brain health in general?
Look, the research that she's quoting to is actually from the finger study, the Lancet papers. These are all, and again, the data there is anywhere between 45 to 60%, depending on, from study to study. So yeah, I think it's largely, however, linked to dementia. But dementia is an overarching term. Now, whether it can link to overall of all of brain health, and I'm thinking also, let's say, recurrences of brain stroke, for example. So if you look at the risk factors that exist between brain stroke and dementia, they are not too dissimilar. It does include, like, for example, lack of sleep, for instance, stress, for instance. So I feel like if you are able to address those risk factors and adjust your lifestyle to, kind of be a bit more neuroprotective, it will help you for, most of your brain health, concerns.
Right. And in fact, I'm happy you mentioned that risk of the risk factors, because we'll just bring that up on our screen right now. And these are list of factors that increase our risk of developing three most common brain diseases, whether it's stroke, dementia, and later life depression. Now, these are 17 factors in all, and the list comes from a systematic review of 59 meta-analysis. So the data over here is pretty solid. We'll link you to that paper as well in the description. But let's
Yeah.
address these, Isaac. Now, poor sleep and chronic stress, something that you've also been mentioning, have been listed as modifiable risk factors. So
Yes.
clearly, the 996 work week that is being sold to us is not helping my brain.
Absolutely. Like, it's not, something that can help if your brain is not getting enough rest. Now, um, different societies, of course, have different working patterns. Um, if you are, however, working, let's say 996, right? But the remaining 12 hours, you are fairly restful, or 10 hours you are restful. Um, I feel it's okay. I think what's important is what you do outside the 996. If if a 996 leaves very little room for physical activity, for socialization, for good sleep, then 996 is really harmful.
I mean, you have 12 hours.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. In 12 hours, if you have to fit like all that, then it's really,
And if you live
really
in
harmful.
Bombay and you have to travel from Lower Parel to wherever.
Exactly. So it will be really, really harmful. So yeah, I just wanted to give you a sense of that, like people sometimes think that, like anything that's black and white is like definitely bad. But who knows, if there is a 996 that's working somewhere where, somebody is getting like great sleep, they're exercising well, they are, socially engaged and connected, not too bad. I just wanted to leave that, sort of
So,
room.
so also tell me this, is this something that only affects you in the future? Or does that take a toll on my work performance as of today?
See, it will definitely take a toll on the future. And, one, again, anecdotal observation around this, that if you, see popular literature, is that when you're at work, your purpose and, what you have to achieve your day, again, it goes back to how the brain is just like such a wonderful organ. It'll help you sort of just push through deficits. It will not really, affect you. So, there are these high performance professors and, literature writers, etc., who will be like really high performing one day, but 1 month after they have left their job, they have, suddenly struggled. Because, when you really have something to chase, the brain really ensures that, okay, let's get this done, even at the risk of poor sleep, and, we're completely exhausted, but the brain will make up for it. In fact, a very sensitive portrayal of what our brain goes through is in that movie Inside Out. So if you look at how neuroscientists, so obviously Inside Out has a beautiful kind of cult following, etc. But there are certain videos on YouTube, Kavita, in which neuroscientists are explaining how actually the movie is very close to, real life, and how different emotions, stress, adrenaline, all of these things, right? They help you carry through the day. But it will definitely affect you in the future, even if it does not affect you in its present moment. And tomorrow is probably the right way to look at it.
Also, the other thing that keeps coming up is, and it's there in this list of facts, but would you recommend that we regularly make time for our friends, at least for the sake of our brain?
Yes, again, there is one beautiful Harvard study, which is known as the longest running research on happiness, which has tracked Harvard candidates from like, from the time they were 20s all the way up to 70s, 80s. And they found that people who felt, very fulfilled with their lives, there was just one common connection. And that was the fact that they all had a thriving friends and family circle. That's it. It was not physical activity. It was not sleep. I mean, we're discussing like all of these things, right? I guess the purpose of me bringing up that is that sometimes you will not be able to get everything right. Right? It's extremely hard to get like all your lifestyle in right. But I think if you start with getting, let's say, just your social circle right, wherein you feel like connected, you feel you have someone to talk to, you feel protected. I feel that particular, like particular kind of cocoon is also like good enough and is neuroprotective enough. In given today's lifestyle, however, it might not be true, given that the risk factors are so high for everything else that just having one is not enough. But I would say from a neuroprotective, from the lens that you were asking me this question of, social circle can immensely help. But we live in a time where only social circle will not help. Maybe that Harvard study was way back in the day, but I think it definitely helps to have that social circle as an additional neuroprotective layer.
But then also, since talking about mental health now,
Hmm.
like you told us, there is a clear relationship between that and cognitive health. So, stress, anxiety, depression, these are issues that we often ignore or
Hmm.
don't even talk about in India.
Hmm.
So, how important is that we start talking about this and actually get it addressed
Hmm.
in time?
So, look, mental health, thankfully, there's been a lot of conversation around mental health over the last, let's say, 5 years. And it's a lot easier to find help if you're struggling with mental health. the thing that I can say is, if you're listening to this and feel that something is not feeling right as you wake up in your day and it has persisted for, let's say, a couple of weeks, it's time to address it. And best way to address it is first speak to a friend. And if you feel that talking to your friend also has not helped, then you definitely should seek expert help. That's generally been my personal kind of rubric to whether I should seek professional help or not. Like, okay, like one week can be bad for anyone, 10 days can be bad for everyone, but the same feeling of just being down and helpless and not sort of a sense of listlessness, poor sleep, and sort of that kind of listlessness, if it exists for more than like 2 weeks, generally one would say that you should look out for yourself, and you don't have to do straight away by going to a like mental health practitioner, but at least try and address it with a friend, and if not, then of course seek expert help.
Uh, I want to bring your attention to one more risk factor, that is indulging in leisure activities which help cognitive health.
Yeah.
Now I'm picking out these outlier things because these are things that we don't really talk about. What
Yeah.
what does this exactly mean? Is it does doing the Wordle or Sudoku, does that count, or do we need to do both?
So, yeah, so I think the interesting thing about this is that the brain likes a good challenge and it also likes winning. And I think that state of flow, which is basically, that something seems challenging, but it also seems attainable, right? And I think anything that you mention in this category, whether it's even I would even put gardening under the same bucket, right? It's not easy to kind of be dedicated to it. And so all of these things, again, are neuroprotective in nature. If you're learning to play how an instrument, that probably has got a higher order of neuroprotectiveness to it, simply because you are probably doing hand-eye coordination, you're remembering rhythms, you're also sort of trying to stay in tune. So there is a lot happening there. But irrespective of whatever you pick, if you have something where you feel that there's a sense of challenge and you feel fulfilled once you go to the cross it and then you go to the next one, it automatically helps your brain feel good naturally. And feeling good naturally basically is the combination of oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, obviously, as well as I'm forgetting one neurotransmitter. But basically, it's the fact that these are all great for synaptic connections. And when that happens, your brain feels like, like all those neurons are firing. When the brain finds new connections by working on something that is challenging, like I said, again, it can be anything, but as long as you also feel fulfilled doing it, it will definitely, and that's the science behind it. Am I firing newer neurons and putting my brain to task and making it feel good? Because there are these neurotransmitters which are doing the magic. Again, explained very well in Inside Out, better than what I probably did. But yeah, that's the state of flow that.
So start a new hobby when you're in your 40s.
Yeah.
That's an
or
interesting
or
thing.
pick up an old hobby. But I think it's that element of, again, I think
Wha-
it's like, see, if I choose, let's say, mountaineering, and I don't like mountaineering at all, that's probably not a good choice. So you got to feel, that you got to pick up something that is attainable as well. So just that little nuance
So
to
so
it.
what do you do?
I play tennis. I play tennis competitively, actually. Way like I'm 42 now, but I try and compete with young kids and on weekends and tournaments, and I feel like that's my flow state. Like I want to do really well, but it's also like a skill that I have to work on. It's not easy at all. So for me, that's tennis, and to an extent, maybe weight like strength training as well. But tennis way higher on my radar than strength training.
And tennis, of course, is good for your
It's great
not
for
just your
like.
cognitive health, but also great for your physical
Exactly. For
health.
overall longevity as well. It's
Yeah,
just been a coincidence that I chanced upon tennis and now I just can't let go of it.
right. So tell me this: what are the four or five non-negotiables that your experts at Ivory recommend to that people do to keep their brains healthy?
Physical activity is number one. Again, the data in sort of recent literature has been very compelling. If you are sort of, I would say, kind of strength training is one way, but I would say movement of any kind. Like even if let's say, strength training is not for everyone, but just begin with movement of any kind. That's a non-negotiable. Sleep is a non-negotiable. And then I would say sort of social connections is also non-negotiable. I think just getting these three right is actually going a long way, and not counting diet and let's say sort of keeping yourself engaged with something, right? Like if you are just doing all of this, but you just feel like there's nothing I want to do all day. That's not great as well, which is where all those puzzles and brain games, etc., are a low friction point entry into solving that fifth one. But the first three that I mentioned are very, very much like non-negotiables.
Right. And of course, what Isaac is telling you is also keeping in mind that you are looking at all the other parameters of your health. You're ensuring that your sugar levels, your cholesterol levels,
Yes,
all of these, your blood pressure
absolutely.
and all is in control and it's taken care of. You are working on your cardiac health because a lot of the risk factors for your heart disease and risk factors for the brain, like we
Yeah.
just pointed out to you, are very, very similar. So, Isaac, if you were to draw up a very simple, practical, easy to follow plan for the new year,
Yeah.
if somebody wants to start focusing on their brain health, what are the small kind of goals that they should just
Starting
aim for?
small is great. I'm a big believer in starting small. I would say the first thing you can do, which is probably the least friction, and this is the irony of it, this is the thing that requires the least amount of friction, is to actually fix your sleep. Like you don't have to go out anywhere. You don't have to
Yeah, I
pick
mean,
up a bar
I
bed.
call it the laziest hack to longevity,
It's
and
the
I just love
laziest
it.
hack. It's really like the laziest hack. I think you've caught on to something really sort of smart when you say that. It's like get your sleep in. If you get your sleep in first, it's likely that in the morning when you wake up, you'll feel refreshed and you'll feel like a little bit more energized to step out and do something. I think let those two be the starting point. I don't want to give a list of four. Um, and it really begins with a list of one. It's just like, switching lights off in time. So many sleep hacks now available with Matthew Walker's work having been like so mainstream, TED Talks, etc. Just like beginning with sleep is a great start because that helps your brain. And if you wake up energized, trust me, the first thing that you will want to do is, what can I do before work begins? And then, let your strength training or your tennis or your running or something else take over. I think that's really I want to say as simple as that because it is as simple as that.
Now, that is a great place to end the conversation. Like Isaac just told us, there isn't much that you really need to do to get started on keeping your brain healthy. You need to sleep well. Get your 7 to 8 hours of sleep a day. And once you wake up, make it a point to get some movement in. So, sleep well, move more, and be kind to yourself. And do it consistently, do it every day. That should get you started on your path to good health of the brain and physical health as well. And of course, overall, have fun. Your brain just loves it. Now, if you found this interview useful, I've queued up two more that you might want to watch. The one shows you how to reduce dementia risk, the one that I mentioned earlier, and the other gives you a list of easy and free biohacks that you can get started doing today. So for more India focused longevity content, if you like this, if you like what you watch, for more India focused longevity content like this, make sure that you subscribe to Never Too Late channel. I will see you soon with another longevity show.